Deepali, are you waiting for somebody? Are you waiting for someone to join?
No, sir. Actually, I'm waiting for your nod to start. Shall I start?
Please.
Okay, sir. Okay. So, namaskar, everyone. And my warm regards and gratitude to Dr. A.K. Sharma, Regional Education Officer, Bhavans, New Delhi, for giving me this opportunity to take a session on design and development of English core paper for class 12. As we all know that CBSE is one of the national boards to conduct secondary and senior secondary exam. And board is trying its level best to ensure the validity and reliability of its assessment. So design and development of question paper is very vital or very important for any assessment to take place. And we also realize that it requires meticulous effort and strategic thinking, lots and lots of it. So today we'll be discussing things related to the development of the question paper. Next. Okay. So question paper, any question paper begins or starts with the making of blueprint. So we will be talking about blueprint, what a blueprint is. So a blueprint is a tabulated list that comprises complete information on how the students will be assessed. So basically, it talks about what is the curriculum that will be assessed, what will be the item format or the question format, what will be the length of the assessment, or what domains will be tested, and what kind of questions will be prepared. So this entire information is packed in one document, which is called a blueprint. Okay. So now this slide talks about the development process or the steps for making of blueprint. And the first step is the curriculum analysis. So when we say curriculum analysis, it is basically the aims and objectives of a curriculum, that what are the learning outcomes for the same, what are we trying to achieve. So what our students should know or should be able to do by the end of the course. And what are the specific measurable skills and knowledge that the students are expected to demonstrate. After this comes the next thing is this is the process. After blueprint, we have to talk about what kind of questions. How do we, we prepare the questions or items as we call them. So how is this assessment constructed? And also, what is the purpose of this assessment? What are we trying to test? So we have to be very, very clear about that. What domains are we testing and what are we expecting the children to do in that? Also, then next we move to the after question writing, it is reviewing and editing. Now, as we all know that reviewing is a very, very important part, as like I said, that a lot of meticulous planning goes into preparation of the blueprint. So we'll be talking about the entire document of blueprint in later slides, but we have to ensure that whatever we have made, we must review it and we must check it that it's all right. And finally, the last step, which is the finalization of the blueprint. like when we are ensuring the accuracy and clarity and everything that we're intending to put is there in the blueprint. So now, because we're talking about assessment here, we should be very, very clear about what are the aims of English core paper. Here we are talking about English core paper. So what are we actually trying to achieve? So again, we all know that English paper is divided into 3 parts for class 12th. The first part is reading and comprehension. So in reading and comprehension, we basically focus on understanding and interpreting different types of texts. So it is basically, in totality, if I talk about, it is about enhancing students' language skills and their critical thinking through reading. Through reading, obviously, there are other parts or sections also like writing and literature. The reading section basically focus on developing comprehension and how are the students able to understand, and are they able to skim and scan and find out the relevant information. So these skills are developed through their reading and reading comprehension section. After that, we come to the creative writing section. So here we expect our students to, be able to write in all different genres and formats. There may be their notices or their letters, or there is this report writing. So our students should be able to express their ideas in a coherent manner. That is what we're trying to achieve. The next part of the next section is literature section, and it checks all the literary works that are there in the syllabus. So again, children should be able to analyze the themes. They should be able to analyze the characters. They should be able to give their commentary about that. So basically, overall, if I talk about all the 3 sections, we are trying to make children proficient in this language. Next slide. Okay. So this slide talks about the weightage of different sections. So this, I guess, is in the knowledge of everybody. There are 3 sections. Section A comprising of reading comprehension, which is for 22 marks. So there'll be 2 reading comprehension questions of various different kinds. The second question is generally the, case-based question. Then we have creative writing section, which is tested for 18 marks, and there are 4 different styles of writing genres. And finally, we have literature, which is for 40 marks. Also, there is an internal assessment for 20 marks, where we are assessing their listening and speaking skills. And also, there is a project for 10 marks. Next slide. So this slide is talking about weightage and difficulty level. So whenever we are preparing a question paper, we have to include a wide range of difficulty level. And this difficulty can be both intrinsic and extrinsic. So when we say intrinsic difficulty, it means that the text or content itself is naturally challenging. So like there may be a story or a chapter which has some deep meanings, or maybe the vocabulary is very difficult, or for example, reading assessment. Now, if we are testing reading assessments, so we have to include the questions of all different difficulty levels. Like we can even make the questions difficult by asking the more information which is implicit rather than explicit, like which is not clearly given in the passage, and the students have to analyze and then write their answers. Then extrinsic difficulty comes from how the question is asked. If the language of the question is such that it makes the question difficult. So we have to see that the difficulty level is balanced, like the way CBSE wants us to keep. So 20% moderate, then 50% is moderate to high, like the middle part. And finally, 30% of the difficulty level will be high for the brighter students. Okay. So now this slide talks about the question paper design And how? Now, the CBSE is shifting more towards competency-based questions. Now, this is a very, very important part. Earlier, the focus was more on rote learning, but now that has moved more towards asking more of competency-based questions, for which the students have to think more. They have to understand better. So earlier, the percentage was just 40%, but now CBSE has increased it to 50%. So the new approach is not only recall or remembrance, it is more about application. So a lot of application-based questions, and also this time to even create category was one category in Bloom's taxonomy, which was generally not tested. So we are also getting a lot of create category questions, which we'll be discussing later in the session. Okay, and then CBSE is also focusing a lot on the 21st century skills, so, like, critical thinking and communication skills, collaboration skills. So a lot of activities also have to be done related to these during the course of learning. And then the assessment should also check all these things. And now, I'll give an example. We do not ask students the summary of the poem. Like earlier, we used to ask the summary or paraphrase the poem in your own words. And nowadays, the focus is more on like, how does the theme of the poem apply to the current situation or real life situation? You know, and deficiency, definitions of reading proficiency, if we say, they have been varied over the time and across various different education systems. So if I say reading may not necessarily be, well, it can be for various different reasons. A reading can be only to pronounce words, just to teach children how to read properly and pronounce words properly. It can also explain the meanings of the words, or if we take it to a little higher level, it will be to comprehend the text and use information from the text. And we can even extend it to enjoying and appreciating text. This is also one of the learning objectives that we see nowadays is there. Next slide, ma'am. So this slide talks about the exam questions breakdown. So as the slide is showing that their competency-based questions are for 50%. Now, these competency-based questions can be of various different styles. We have MCQs, which are multiple choice questions. Then we have close constructed response questions also, like wherever when all teachers would agree with me, whenever we're preparing MCQs, there's a lot of problem in creating plausible distractors. So when that becomes a challenge, we can always go for close constructed response questions, which are more of fill-ups or one word or one line answers. So these kinds of questions are there. Then multiple choice questions are already there. Then we have some case-based questions. So case-based questions are generally, these questions include a situation or a scenario which is picked, and the questions are given related to that. Generally, the reference to context questions that we include, they are case-based questions. We also have source-based questions. Now, they are based on the information that is provided through a particular source. If I talk about the reading comprehensions, they are source-based questions. So all these kinds of questions should be included. And we basically assess that how children are going to apply their knowledge. Then we also have short and long questions. These short and long questions, they require detailed response. And these are generally questions which check the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Next slide. Can we have next slide, ma'am? Ruchi ma'am, are you there?
2 minutes, ma'am. Just give me.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So, in the beginning, I mentioned about the exam blueprint. So I'll be now showing you the blueprint, the sample or the pattern that CBSE provides us. So that sample of the blueprint has different sections. I guess there is some issue with the PPT. So we are waiting for Ruchi ma'am to show us the slide. Till then, I'll start discussing. Okay, we have it here. So as you can see, this is the pattern of the blueprint. Now, this blueprint comprises of first the content areas. Content areas are our domains that we are going to test. And then there is a topic for the main topic, and then there is a space for subtopics also that we'll be testing. Then we have cognitive levels. These are different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. We know that Bloom's taxonomy, there are 6 levels, which we will be discussing in the coming slides. So the purpose is that all the 6 levels should be incorporated in our learning. Yes, thank you, Ruchi ma'am. So if you see, then we have to include various levels of difficulty, what kinds of item formats. So the item here, when we say item, we mean questions. So all different kinds of questions which have the constructed response, where they have to write down the answers, and then select response questions where they have to select the questions. These are the MCQs where some options are given and they have to select. So if you, what you see on the screen are different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Now these levels, they are remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So along with these levels, you can see that there are certain action words are also there. Now these action words actually make it a little easy for us to identify that what level of Bloom's taxonomy that is. If the questions are very simple, remembering questions like what, how, where, when. So something of this sort, if you are asking, that falls under the remembering category of the Bloom's taxonomy, which is the very basic level. So this is basically, they requires the students only to recall the information that they already have. Then the next section is understanding. So this understanding is a little higher level where they compare, they contrast, they demonstrate, these kinds of things are there. How would you classify something, and if we are teaching a chapter or a poem, so they'll be able to explain the poem by the end of, if they're thorough with this level, they'll be able to explain the poem. And then next we have applying. Applying is how are they able to apply the knowledge that they have gained into something concrete or constructive. So when we say they are, if they're applying, sorry, I guess applying, so they will be able to derive the meaning of the poem, and they'll be able to explain it, write it, express their own thoughts about it. So the words like how would you explain this, what examples can you give, these all fall under the category of applying. Then next we have analyzing. Now these are the 3 higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So the action words are outline, classify, categorize, analyze. So if you're asking your students to analyze a character or analyze the themes, then you are asking a question under the analysis level of Bloom's taxonomy. Next is evaluate. So evaluate again is the very high level. And if the students are able to evaluate, they'll be actually be able to distinguish between, like when we say compare and contrast the characters. So this is the evaluating section where they are, judging or the value or worth of the information and the ideas, and they are able to present it in their own words. And finally, the last section is the creating section. And creating is when you are creating something new, you're combining the parts, like whatever analysis you have done. When you analyze, you break it into parts. And then you create, you combine the parts and you design or you formulate something new. If you're asking them to write a diary entry. Now, there are many, many very interesting questions under this category, which we'll be discussing later. Okay, so now next is, I have tried to show some of the questions. I've tried to frame the questions, how they fall under different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So the chapter is the last lesson by Alfonso Dode. And the very first question, which is the basic remembering question, who is the protagonist of the last lesson? So very, very simple recall question, or like, who's the author of the chapter? Something which is explicitly given in the text is what is called remembering. Then we have understanding. Explain why Franz was reluctant to go to school in the last lesson. So he has understood whatever information is there in the chapter, and he'll be able to explain it in his own words. Then the next is applying, which is the third level of Bloom's taxonomy. So imagine you are living in a country where your native language is being replaced by a foreign language in school, as in the last lesson. How would you adapt to this change, and what actions would you take to preserve your native language? So again, this involves the student to apply the knowledge that he has learned. So he'll sometimes these levels are overlapping also. When we say it's an apply question, little bit of analyzing also will come into this section. Little bit of understanding is also going to come in this question. So that overlapping is always there. Next is analyzing. Now, analyze the impact of Prussian occupation on the emotions of the students and M. Hemmel in the last lesson. So very clearly, there's a lot of things that the students have think about, they have to understand, and only then they'll be able to analyze that how the Prussian occupation has impacted what is the emotional effect on the students of whatever the incident has happened in the story. And finally, evaluate. So do you think M. Hemmel could have taught French more effectively before the last day? Justify your answer. So this is the evaluate level of Bloom's taxonomy. And finally, the create section. In this, they imagine you are Franz and you have to write a diary entry reflecting on the last French lesson and how it has changed your perspective on learning your native language. So again, this is something new that they're creating. They have learned, they've understood, they have analyzed the information, and now they will have to put everything into use and create this diary entry. So I have tried to take another chapter and create the same kinds of questions. So when you are including these questions in your assessment, we have to make sure that all types of questions are included depending on what is the weightage of that question. Remembering and understanding questions will generally have low weightage, and the other questions will be generally long questions with a higher weightage. So remembering, it says, where did William Douglas develop a fear of water? So very, very short answer that would be, then why did the incident of YMCA pool leave such a deep impact on Douglas? Think of a fear that you had once overcome. How did your experience compare to Douglas' determination to overcome his fear of water? Like we discussed, that anything that they have to compare and contrast. So that falls under the application category. So they're like comparing their own experience to the experience of the main character or the protagonist in the story, and then they're writing their answer. If anybody has any questions or anybody wants to share anything, they may. Next is analysis. Now, analysis is, question says, analyze the role of the instructor in Douglas's journey to overcoming his fear of water. How did the instructor's methods contribute to Douglas' success? So this again involves a lot of understanding, and then they will, only when they have properly understood and they're able to analyze, they'll be able to answer this question. Do you think Douglas's determination alone helped him to overcome his fear of water, or did external factors play a significant role? Support your answer. So again, now they will be able to write this answer only when all the parts that they have understood, if they combine all the parts and they write this answer. And a create question, which is again, lots of diary entries and speeches. In that form, they are giving questions even in the literature section. Earlier, we had these kinds of things only in the creative writing section. now we have in the literature section as well. So this question, write a motivational sleep as William Douglas. The children will have to imagine themselves or assume themselves to be Douglas, and they have to address students about overcoming fears and challenges in life, drawing from your own experience with conquering your fear of water. So not only will the child, elucidate from the text, he will also have to write about his own experience and how what he thinks about it. So his own commentary plus a lot of evidences and things from the text. So now here we we move to the assessment of reading skills again. Reading skills, which is the first section of our question paper. So now reading skill comprises of, now like I said, that there are various different kinds of reading comprehension. It may be factual, it may be descriptive, it may be literary, and one case-based question is always there. That is, I guess, the basic purpose is because this is one authentic piece of writing, and our children should be able to read these kinds of texts and draw information from that. So these are those passages which have, some kind of data or some kind of graph, some kind of information in this form given, and they have to read and analyze the information to write down the answers. Then the question kinds can be, we ask them some vocabulary questions, we ask them some critical analysis questions, we even ask them to interpret the information and then produce the answers. Then last is the pedagogical insight. These are the comprehension questions which generally promote a lot of critical thinking, like the CBSE wants us to do. So next time moving to this questions round, because how should we frame good questions? This is a very important part of design and development of question paper. These were whatever we have spoken so far, that is the basic structure of the paper. Now we'll be talking about how should we design the paper, that is that it aligns with whatever the CBSE or the board wants us to do. So these are some general tips for all the sections. First is avoid ambiguous or vague answers. So, and below it, you can see that I have written down a good question and a bad question. So the bad question says, what do you think about the character's actions? Now, this question is really very vague. So if we give questions like this, generally we'll not get complete answers. So instead of this, if we say, do you think the character's decision to leave was justified? So some clues, some theme we have to mention in the question so as to get the answer that we are expecting. So why or why not, the child has to justify his answer. Then double negatives. Whenever we are using double negatives, not, no, they only confuse the students, and they are never, most of the times they're not able to understand the questions well. So is it not true that the author doesn't fail to communicate the protagonist's dilemma? Now, why should we complicate the question like this? When we can simply ask, does the author successfully show the protagonist's dilemma? So why to include extra negatives in the question? Then we have to avoid any kind of inconsistency. Like if I say, I'm asking a question, how many kilometers did the character travel in the beginning of the story, and how many miles did they cover by then? So kilometers and miles. So these are inconsistencies. The question should be framed in a very consistent manner. So we can say, how many kilometers did the character travel in both the beginning and the end of the story? Now we also have to ensure that the questions align with the learning outcomes. And this is a very important point. The teacher should have very clearly in her mind that what is she expecting? What is the learning outcome? So if you are expecting the children to analyze the themes, then the question has to be framed for that. Like for example, in The Enemy, how does Dr. Sadao inner conflict highlight the theme of loyalty? So instead, if I say, how in the enemy, what is Dr. Sadow's internal conflict? Now, the student may only write down the about the conflict that he has, but he will not relate it to the theme. So generally the answer that will come will be incomplete. So we have to be careful while designing questions. Next slide. Okay, now the previous slide, I guess I've not covered all the points. Yeah, so avoid difficult vocabulary. So we should not unnecessarily add more complex words in the questions which are generally not required. If I say, enumerate the principal vicissitudes experienced by the protagonist. Very, very complex. When the children don't understand the questions, how are you expecting them to write any answers? So list the main challenges faced by the main characters, because we have to be clear about our purpose. Our purpose is not to check their vocabulary. Here the purpose, if you're checking literature, so the question has to be framed in accordance to that. Then do not use convoluted sentences. Again, convoluted sentences are the sentences which unnecessarily make the sentence very complex. So look at this bad example. In the light of the protagonist's circumstantial decisions exacerbate the external variables, what might the author be implicitly inferring? So a very complex question. So these are not, Shashi Tharoor kind of vocabulary we should not be using. So what is the author suggesting through the main character's choices can be a simpler way to talk about the question. Okay, next slide. Now we move to the multiple choice questions. Lots and lots of multiple choice questions have been included in our this plan nowadays. And the first of all, I would like to explain the terminology that is related to multiple choice questions. So firstly, what is given is the stimulus. The water cycle describes how water moves from Earth's surface to the atmosphere and back again through processes like evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. So there's a question which is called the stem. What process in the water cycle involves water vapor cooling and changing back into liquid? So this is our stem. And then there are various options given, A, B, C, D. Now, these options have 3 incorrect answers and 1 correct answer. So the correct answer is called the key, and the incorrect answers are the distractors. Now, it is very, very important that the distractors should be plausible. Plausible that they, in a sense that they should not reveal the answer. And again, there are many rules how to prepare plausible distractors, which we are going to talk about in the coming slides. So I hope the terminology is clear. We have stem, then we have key, and then we have distractors. So if you look at these guidelines on how to write select response items. Now, MCQs are also called select response items because they are selecting the answers in this. They don't have to write answer on their own. Now, firstly, they have to align the items to their learning outcomes. So we have discussed earlier also, the teacher has to have very clearly in her mind that what domain she's testing and what are the learning outcomes that she wants to achieve. So the first question says, which one of the following is the synonym for the word kind? Again, not a very good question because we have not given any context. So this kind of a question is a very generic sort of a question. But if we change it a little bit and we say, the old man was patient and kind to everything that had life. Which one of the following best describes the old man? So then there are 4 options: sincere, compassionate, passionate, and harmless. So the features that we have to keep in mind or take care of are that the items should be written in a manner that they don't give away the answer. Sometimes by mistake, we include certain words which are there, which, some of the words are there in the question statement itself, which, give a very clear clue to the student that this is going to be the answer. Secondly, the items should be rarely be framed in negative, which we have already discussed. We should avoid the use of not, no negatives. Follow grammatical consistency between the stem and options. Now, when you are creating your stems, if your your options, if one of the options is extremely big and other three are small, the students are smart enough, they'll know that at least this option, either this is the answer or this has to be completely ruled out. So there have to be the stems the distractors have to be all of same length, and there should be some consistency in them. And then they should be plausible, and they should be similar in context, phrasing, and length, and there should be no repetitions in the options. And it is also very important that we take care that there should be only one correct option. Otherwise, the question will have no relevance. So there are some questions that I framed. Next slide. Now, which of the following is not a theme in the poem Aunt Jennifer's Tigers? Now, again, can you tell me the error in the question? Anybody from the audience? Though it's mentioned in the slide as well, but yes, if anybody has anything to say about the question.
Ma'am, negatives.
Negatives, one is negatives are there, and
Asks us to avoid.
The answer distractor is too long.
the answer distractor is too long, yes. Yeah. So very clearly the child will get to know ki, okay, the three distractors which are there, they don't sound plausible at all. Oppression of women, strength and power, the beauty of nature. Now, beauty of nature is nowhere loosely related also to the question. So obviously the students will know that this is not even a relevant distractor. So we shouldn't be framing our questions like this. So, and also we can see that the grammatical inconsistency is there. They do not follow a consistent sample. Like, if you see option A and B, they are full sentences, while B and C are short phrases. No, here all are phrases. But then we have to take care. It should not be there that we give some are phrases and some are sentences. They should not be framed in this manner. And the phrasing should be even in length also, and the way we are designing them also. And we should avoid any kind of repetition. Next slide. Yes, somebody was saying something.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, I would like to ask a question. When it is a select response item like MCQ, are we supposed to give this kind of a distractor as none of this?
No, we should not. Generally that's a tendency, because like I discussed in the very beginning, that finding plausible options, especially in language, becomes a task for the teachers. That is why they will, if they get 3, that's the very easy way to write none of these or all of these. We should try and avoid. It shouldn't be done. And okay, your next slide is showing you the corrected version. What is the central theme of the poem Aunt Jennifer's Tigers? It is oppression of women, strength and power, escape from societal restrictions, or oppression by women. So this is how we should take care in framing these kinds of questions. Now we move to the constructed response items or short response questions. So in between, there are other questions also, ma'am. Like if you feel that it is really not possible me to find 4 possible options, then it's better that you should use the other options like, fill up kind questions or one-liners. CBSE also allows us to use those kinds of questions. So these created response items are designed to produce brief answers, and they assess basic knowledge and understanding of the students. And they do not follow a strict format. We're free, like we have a little flexibility here, and we can frame the questions the way we want them. But then we have to be sure that the students get a clear message that the response length has to be limited, because obviously the marking is also, or the weightage is also less for these questions. So the question should not be such which requires them to write a lot. And the response length is limited to a few lines or one sentence, sometimes a few words only. And the students can even respond in bullet points. So we should not be penalizing them for that. even if if they've written their answer in points, because generally in English we do not admit those kinds of answers which are written in points. But here we can excuse the students. Now we have some questions. In the last lesson, M. Hamel says, we all have a great deal to reproach ourselves with. What does this reveal about the theme of dash in the story? So find the missing word. In deep water, Douglas overcomes his fear of water using dash and perseverance. Again, we have limited the response to one word only. So we have to, if you're giving this question for 1 mark, keep the responses short and give a clear indication in the question that how much is the student to write. Next slide. Yeah. So these are the guidelines for creating long questions or, essay type questions. Now, firstly, before we discuss these kinds of questions, these are the questions that the students find it most difficult to answer. Nowadays, we all have seen that there's a trend that they do not practice writing that much. So a lot of practice needs to be given to students when it comes to these sections. And especially with the new changes that the CBSE has introduced in these kinds of questions. So provide enough information for student to understand the task requirements. If you have seen that these are generally case-based questions, they have a lot of content in them, a lot of information in them. Consider the time students need to answer the essay and communicate it clearly. These kinds of instructions we are giving in our question papers that answer from in 120 to 150 words. And we have to keep in mind how much time is the child going to take. Otherwise, he'll either finish the paper too early or he may not be able to finish it. Then assess higher order thinking skills using verbs aligned with the learning outcomes. Words we have seen in the Bloom's taxonomy page, what kinds of words are there. So we have to ensure that our paper is balanced in every aspect. We are including all the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Higher order thinking skills must be included. Then write questions in simple, clear, and direct language. Yes, teachers should not try and use all the difficult words and vocabulary in their questions. That would not be the right way to assess them. Then use simple and precise language in these items. Prepare marking scheme rubrics in advance for consistency in grading. Now, this is also a part of designing of the question paper only. When you are giving a question, you should have to have in mind that what all points the will be included in the answer. Now, CBSE also gives us a rubric or a marking scheme to assess the answers. It is generally the content, then we have some marks for accuracy and expression. So we have to have a very clear idea that how much for content, how much for the other areas. And also when it comes to content, we should have some keywords listed. Okay, if the content carries 4 marks, 2 marks for these keywords should be there, then he should include this information, then he could include this information. Only then we'll be able to, check the papers or correct the papers in a consistent manner. Then learning objectives have to be kept in mind, and the questions should be aligned to those learning objectives. Okay, the next slide. Now, again, some questions I have tried to include. Write about Gandhiji's role in Indian independence. Now, if you see this question, this question a child can attempt even when he has not read the chapter. Again, there is no context anywhere. So do you think you'll be able to penalize the child if the child is not even using any evidence from the text? Because this is very, very generic by nature. So it is too broad and vague, does not specify what aspect of Gandhi's role should be, focused on. And it is also unclear what level or depth is required for the response. The moment you change the question and you mention something, in Indigo, how did Gandhiji's involvement in the Champaran movement change the lives of peasants? So analyze his methods of leadership and their impact on Indian politics. Now, in this question, we have given him 2-3 clues. One is we're talking about the Champaran movement, but the chapter talks about that movement only. Also, we have asked the child to focus on the leadership of Gandhiji and how did it impact the Indian politics. Now, the child will have a very clear idea in his mind that what is the expectation of the examiner and how he should write his answer. So again, specific focus on Champaran movement, as it is written, clear directive to analyze Gandhi's leadership style and his methods and the impact. And you see that I've tried to give a marking scheme also only for the content part. So the keywords like non-violence, peasants' conditions, leadership, whatever Gandhiji did. So this way you can prepare a rubric for yourself, like 1 mark for explaining leadership or 1 mark for relating it to non-violence and 1 mark for the historical impact. So this has to be very, very clear in the examiner's mind. Okay, here we have another question. Now, this is the question which I have actually lifted from one of the CBSE's papers. The king was callous as a ruler and behaved whimsically. Thus, the people in his kingdom suffered while he fulfilled his desire to kill 100 tigers. Do you find leaders or politicians in the world today being indifferent to the needs of the people and behaving in the same way? Comment with relevant examples. So can you guess what category or what level of Bloom's taxonomy is this one?
What is a long answer essay type?
Sorry?
It's a long answer essay type question.
Yes, definitely. It's a long answer. It's an essay type question.
It's analyzing basically Bloom's taxonomy.
Yes. Analyzing and I would say little understanding, analyzing, like there's a little bit of overlapping. So he has to talk about, not only talk about the protagonist in the story, that how was he as a person, how callous he was or how whimsical he was, how eccentric he was. But then he has to use, application is also there because he's apply that knowledge to the real life scenario, real life situation. And then he has to think and answer. So he has to have some knowledge about the current scenario, that how, what is his opinion about the political leaders? Are they also behaving in the same manner? So it will, there are many, many levels that he'll be using here. Then we have another question. Imagine you are the narrator writing to your parents back home, telling them about your experience in Antarctica and how it is similar or different to that back home in some ways. Obviously, when you give them this kind of a question in literature part, so you must provide them some hints or some clues about the formats. And even if you have not given that, we should not be penalizing the students for that. So the question includes that part. So how the student has to begin, he'll begin with the format is given, he'll write date, he'll write the place, he'll, dear mom, and then it is so different here. I can't post this letter, but I write to capture these amazing moments. Now, what is this level? Anybody? Again, obviously the 3 higher levels, but then this has some part of create level also, because now he's creating something new. He's writing his own experience about it. So he's taking from the text, he's applying his knowledge, he's analyzing, he's evaluating, and then he's creating something new. He's creating he's writing a diary entry. So he's creating that diary entry here. Okay, the next slide again, one question. The different portrayals of women in the text aren't Jennifer's tigers. Previous slide now. Previous, thank you. The different portrayals of women in the text aren't Jennifer's tigers, going places, lost spring, and my mother at 66 offer insights into the experiences of women in society. You have been able to address your peers and share the ways these portrayals highlight the diversity of female experience and the importance of understanding each individual woman's challenges and experiences. Compose this draft with relevance to any three of these prescribed texts listed above. Now you see that the question has a reference to 2 or 3 different chapters. So what is the child going to do now? Again, a higher level of Bloom's taxonomy here. So he is going to interpret, he is going to analyze, he is going to evaluate all the 3 protagonists and 3 characters. Unless and until he compares and contrasts the 3, he'll never be able to, reach this conclusion. So these kinds of questions are more often asked these days. So it's very, very important that we give our students a lot of practice of these kinds of questions. And generally now, a lot of information is available everywhere, so many sites, so many books. So that habit of writing our students have lost. So it becomes more important for us teachers that we should be giving them a lot of practice of these kinds of questions, especially these as they have been introduced lately only. So, okay, I'm about to end with this slide. The role of teacher and which is very, very important. So we play a very, very crucial role in developing and implementing quality question papers. So it's become a very, very complex task. A lot of thought goes into it, a lot of effort goes into it, and we should not shirk from that. So we need to understand the curriculum, the domains that we are testing, the learning objectives, and then only design a paper and a thoughtful paper, a well-developed paper, so that our purpose is achieved. So assessment is important. At the same time, engaging learning is also important. So if we keep all these aspects in mind, obviously we will be teaching our students in a manner that they are able to achieve, they will do well in their exams. That's all that I had to say about it. Your experiences, your questions are welcome.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Deepali ma'am, actually, I only take class 9th and 10th in my school, KDKVM. But here I would like to ask, because it was based for class 12th English core, I would like to ask, when we are going to just frame the question based on vocabs,
Yes.
we are not supposed to throw the direct questions to the students in the question paper.
No.
So what would be the way
Nowadays,
we are supposed to develop the design items, like as you said, talk about the explicit and implicit way of doing it.
Yes. If our child is able to understand the word, like we teach them how to deduce meanings, he may not know the exact meaning of the word, but even if he is able to deduce meaning, that is all right for us. So we always give him a question framed in a manner where he has to either find out a word which means the same and which is there in the passage. So somewhere, it has to be there in the passage, especially if we are testing it in the reading comprehension. Direct meanings should not be asked. This is what my opinion is. Others are also free to express.
Yes, ma'am, we are actually following the board pattern. We generally go for example, if we have to give the meaning of, find out the correct meaning of the word excitement, as mentioned in the passage, we go for 4 distractors containing the different type of sentences, having the word excitement in a different sense than the children are supposed to get from it. One more question, ma'am. This would be the last question of mine. Ma'am, you talk about the short constructor response. Actually, the children also get confused, and they start providing us with the different kind of answers which are not actually mentioned in the blueprint.
And generally,
one or two words. But so if the answer is correct, we should accept those answers without being restricting ourselves to blueprint. Is it, ma'am?
No, I did not actually understand your question well. You said that you gave them short response answers and the students write long answers.
come up with a lot of answers which may not be in alignment with the blueprint.
Blueprint, right. You know, in
We-
such
we are
cases, even board is little lenient with the students. If the answer is there somewhere, so we do not penalize, we don't have any negative marking for providing extra information. So here our training part comes in. We must train our students in a manner that they understand the questions first and then only they respond. But yes, we don't penalize.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sir, your insights.
Thank you very much. So friends, you were listening to Deepali Madaan. Deepali Madaan is our very passionate teacher. She is dedicated, very supportive. She has been with us in several webinars, very energetic, encouraging, bubbling with the energy. She is PGT English in Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan Vidyashram, Pratapnagar, and having an experience of 11 years as teaching. And at present, she is doing many roles. She is HOD English, Dean Student Welfare, and also dealing with the school magazine and dealing with the student matters, obviously. And I have seen that last time she has made the magazine of our faculty development program in a very excellent way. So in the starting, this computer was not working, so I have not given the introduction. So you are listening to one of the finest teacher of our Vidyashram, Deepali Madaan.
Thank you, sir.
Regarding this making of the question paper, I like to share with you one of the clip that I have seen. I'm sharing with you. So this clip is about the controversy that has started in the NCERT book of class 3. And this was Chitti Aayi Hai. It was environmental study book in which a girl is writing, a Hindu girl is writing a letter to a Muslim boy. So this has got a lot of controversy, and still the controversy is going on. It has blown up now. So let us see that what happens. So I simply want to say you that while drafting a paper, while making a question paper, you have to take care of all these things, and also you have to take the case of bias.
Yes.
It can be any type of bias. Bias should not be there. Rest, you are all intelligent. You know how to deal with such a situation. So try that such situation should not come. And whatever, I mean, honestly we are doing, we should also look honest. It's very important. So thank you very much, Deepali.
Thank you so much,
As
sir.
usual, you were super, wonderful presentation.
Sir,
Thank you
I'm
very
not
much.
alone. I have a team with me. Everybody, there are many people who are working with me.
So convey my regards and thanks to your team members. All
Sure,
deserve
thank you. Yeah.
thanks.
And
They
sir,
have done a wonderful job.
I would like to tell everyone that attendance link has been posted in the chat box. So do fill it.
Is there anyone who would like to thank ma'am?
Yes,
Then-
sir. Yes, sir.
Please.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Very good evening to everyone. So as we wrap up our engaging webinar on designing effective questions, I would like to extend a heartfelt gratitude to all those who have made it to this event and has made it possible to attend all such sessions. But first of all, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge our patron, Dr. A.K. Sharma, sir, Regional Education Officer, sir, Delhi Kendra. Sir, your unwavering, consistent commitment in helping us acquire knowledge from all directions is really an encouragement to the teachers, and it has played an instrumental role in helping us grow, in helping us learn and become better day by day. Also, I would like to thank our esteemed speaker, Srimati Deepali ma'am. Your insights your effort in making us understand such an eminent role of a teacher in designing questions for examinations. It's such a meaningful session for today, and we are proud that we are enriched in understanding whatever has been conveyed by CBSE and through the PPT that you have showed us with relevant examples from all the lessons that are introduced in the curriculum. Also, I would like to extend a big thank to the participants. Your keenness, your learning, your attending these sessions is worth appreciating. Lastly, a special shout out to the team who has organized and worked for conducting this webinar. Your efforts have ensured that it becomes a seamless experience for everyone. So let's take knowledge shared today and apply it in our respective fields, subjects, age appropriate, class appropriate. And I look forward to seeing you all at future events. Thank you, everyone. Thank you once again for joining
Thank you,
us.
Sangeeta. Thank you, Ranjita.
Thank you. Thank you, Ranjita.
Thank you, Deepali. You may
Thank
leave
you.
now.
Thank
We
you,
are
sir.
waiting
Thank
for
you.
the Sanskrit one.
Okay.
Yes, so there were some participants waiting. So should I admit them all?
Please, please, please admit them all. And make me the host. I'll invite. Okay.
All right, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, namaste.
Namaste.
प्रणाम सर, नमस्कार।
Namaskar, 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 Rajnan ji.
Sir, if you can check, I have given that accession.
You have made me the host.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.